Marisol pushed open the glass door of Sunnyside Cafe just as dawn's first light painted the sky in soft pink and gold. The little bell chimed and she slipped inside, her worn leather apron already tied around her waist. She paused for a moment, inhaling the warm, comforting scent of fresh coffee and toasted bread that always greeted her here. It felt like home. Even on days when the world outside seemed colder and less welcoming, she set her canvas tote bag on the polished wooden counter and smoothed her dark hair back into a neat ponytail. The cafe was quiet now, no clatter of plates or hum of conversation. Only the hiss and bubbling of the espresso machine echoed in the breakfast room. Marisol smiled to herself. This peaceful moment before the morning rush was a gift time too. Check the tables, refill sugar jars, and straighten salt and pepper shakers without bumping into anyone. She moved with practiced ease, her brown eyes shining with pride for the place she had worked at for 3 years. By the time the clock on the wall chimed 7, the cafe was already half full. A group of elderly men sat at their usual booth, trading jokes and softly arguing about the day's news. 2 mothers with toddlers juggled juice and crayons at a small round table. A young couple in business suits tapped at their laptops, almost hidden behind steaming mugs. Marisol beamed at each of them as she passed, greeting them by name whenever she could. Then her eyes landed on the corner booth. 2 men strangers to her and to the cafe sat there. Both looked around 50, wearing crisp white shirts and dark slacks, expensive watches glinting on their wrists. They had menus open, but neither was reading. Instead, they leaned toward each other, their heads bent, mouths moving in low tones. From where Marisol stood, she could not hear the words, but she saw the harsh set of their jaws and the way one of them flicked his gaze darkly across the room at Marisol as she walked by. Her heart tightened. She had learned over the years to sense when people felt unwelcome around her. It was in quick side glances, in stiff shoulders, in the sudden silence as she stopped to refill a water glass. She swallowed and reminded herself that her job was to treat every customer with respect, no matter how they treated her. She clipped her pad onto her belt and squared her shoulders. With a calm breath, she stepped toward the booth. "Good morning," she said, her voice gentle. "My name is Marisol. Welcome to Sunnyside Cafe. Can I get you something to drink while you look over the menu?" One man glanced up. Dan's pale blue eyes narrowed for a moment, and something unkind flickered there. He turned away, speaking to his friend without even nodding. The second man rolled his eyes. Marisol hesitated, then turned and reached for the sugar bowls at the counter, telling herself it was just a bad morning for them as she poured sugar for a family at the next table. She felt a familiar knot of tension coil in her chest. She could overhear snippets now, the first man muttering something about not serving her kind, the second laughing softly like they were sharing a private joke that cut deep. Her fingers froze on the lid of the sugar jar. Her kind closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the cinnamon-scented air of the cafe, trying to steady herself. Marisol. It was her coworker, James, leaning around the counter. He winked and mouthed, "You okay?" She nodded, giving him a quick, thankful smile. She turned back to the table. The 2 men watched her as she approached, leaning back with an air of ownership, as though the cafe belonged to them. She set a pitcher of water on the nearest occupied table and carried 2 coffees to the business couple, chatting about their day. Each step felt heavier, though, leading her once more toward that corner booth. She tapped her pen on her pad. The moment hung in the air. At last she drew a breath and marched forward. She set her pad down with determined grace. "What can I start you with?" she asked, meeting the first man's glare with cool calm. The man sneered. "Just bring us coffee. Black." "Wait." He paused, leaning toward her. "And hurry up. We don't want to wait on colored people." His words sliced through the quiet bustle, and every head in the cafe turned. Some diners paused mid-bite, others dropped their utensils, and the conversations hushed. Marisol's pulse thundered in her ears, but she held her ground. She cleared her throat softly. "I'm sorry, but I cannot serve you," she said, her voice steady, though inside her heart pounded like a drum. "If you'd like something, I can get my manager." She stepped back, head held high, refusing to let his hatred shake her dignity. A stunned silence filled the room for a heartbeat. Then the second man rose, his face red with anger. "Can't do that. You're discriminating against us." He slammed his fist on the table. Forks and plates rattled. Some customers flinched. Marcel stood firm. "I'm sorry. That's the end of it." She turned on her heel and walked away, her apron swishing around her legs. On her felt a stirring of support mingle with shock around the cafe. She breathed in, forcing herself to stay calm. James appeared quietly at her side. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, grateful. They went to find the manager together. Marisol spoke softly but clearly, describing the men's words and her decision. The manager, Mr. Donovan, was a kind man who cared deeply about his staff. He listened, his brow furrowed. Within minutes, the two men found themselves asked to leave. They sputtered and cursed, but the manager pointed to the security camera above and explained that the cafe would not tolerate hate speech. The men grumbled as they collected their coats and stormed out. As the door closed behind them, an elderly woman in a knitted shawl rose from a booth and clapped softly at first. Then others joined in, the applause rippling through the room, warm and full of pride. Marisol felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She dipped her head, brushing them away before anyone noticed. Her co-workers gathered around, offering comforting smiles and pats on the back. Regular customers dropped coins and bills on her table in gratitude for her courage. And a young couple even offered a handwritten thank you note. The cafe hummed, with a different energy now, an energy of unity and respect. Marisol returned to her station by the counter, her hands still trembling slightly as she refilled the napkin holders and wiped down surfaces she had already cleaned. But this time she felt stronger, supported by a community that believed in her. A few tables away, the same family who had been first in the door smiled at her. "Don't worry," the mother said softly. "We've got your back." A little boy waved shyly, and Marisol caught his eye. She smiled and gave him a gentle wave back. By the time the clock struck 9, the cafe was busy again. Orders poured in, bells chimed, and plates clattered on trays. But Marisol moved through it all with renewed confidence. Each thank you she heard felt like a small victory. She realized that this place, this cafe, was more than a job. It was a haven of kindness, a place where respect mattered above all else. As she carried a tray of pancakes to a table full of laughing friends, Marisol allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her to stand tall in the face of injustice. She thought about the years she had worked here, building relationships with customers who felt like family. And she thought about the courage it had taken to speak up that morning. Her steps felt lighter now, the weight of fear replaced by a sense of purpose. She would continue serving coffee and breakfasts with a warm smile, knowing that she had made a difference. And in the quiet moments, between rushes, she would remember the look of pride in her manager's eyes and the kindness in her customers' faces. That would carry her through any challenges ahead. Marisol wiped her hands on her apron and glanced around the cafe one last time before turning back to her duties. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, and the day was now in full swing. Her heart felt full, too full of gratitude, of hope, and of certainty that, no matter what happened, she belonged here, and this cafe belonged to everyone who believed in respect and kindness. And that was a truth worth rising for each morning. Marisol woke the next morning with a flutter of nerves in her chest. She had barely slept, her mind replaying yesterday's scene again and again. The cafe's respect at our table sign glowed softly in her memory, a promise she had helped make real. She straightened her uniform, smoothing the creases in her apron before stepping out into the cool air. The streets were still quiet, save for the distant hum of early traffic. She breathed deeply, reminding herself that today would be different and better. When she arrived at Sunnyside Cafe, she felt a small wave of relief. The door jingled as she stepped inside, and she was greeted by the familiar hiss of the espresso machine. Behind the counter, James gave her a thumbs up and a warm smile. "You ready?" he asked softly. Marisol nodded, her voice catching with gratitude. "I think so," she said, and meant it. She moved into her routine stocking cups, polishing silverware, refilling the sugar bowls, yet something felt changed. Customers filed in, each one offering a nod or greeting as she passed. She noticed a few new faces, too. People who had heard about her stand against the two men and come to show support. A young woman in a bright scarf waved her over. "I just wanted to say thank you," she told Marisol, her eyes shining. "What you did yesterday meant a lot." Marisol blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you for being here," she replied, her voice soft. "It means more than you know." As the morning rush began, the cafe filled with the scent of sizzling bacon and brewing coffee, Marisol carried plates of French toast and omelets to eager tables, her steps light. She listened to the chatter around her friends catching up, families planning their day, couples whispering plans for weekend outings. She felt the warmth of community wash over her. Midway through the morning, Mr. Donovan, the cafe manager, approached her with a quiet smile. He handed her a printed email from the local news station. The headline read, "Sunnyside Calf Band's Hate Waitress Stands Up to Racist Guests." Marisol's heart fluttered as she read through the kind words from people praising her courage. She glanced at her reflection and the laminated page, a hint of tears in her eyes. Before she could reply, he squeezed her shoulder gently. "They're all proud of you," he said. "And so am I." At that moment, the door opened and a small crowd gathered outside. They held signs that read, "We stand with Marisol and no room for hate here." People waved and a ripple of applause rose. Marisol stepped forward, unsure what to say. But the crowd cheered louder. Mr. Donovan invited them in, and soon they filled a back corner of the cafe, sipping coffee and chatting. Among them were community leaders, a pastor, a school teacher, and even the local librarian. They shared stories of Marisol's kindness over the years, how she remembered their favorite orders, how she always had time to listen when someone needed to talk. The sight filled Marisol with a mix of pride and humility. She realized how many lives she had touched simply by showing up each day, with respect for every person who walked through those doors, and now they were showing up for her in return. She carried a tray of muffins to a table where two elderly men sat. One of them patted his cane on the wooden floor and said, "Sweetheart, you remind us that every act of kindness matters." Marisol thanked him, tears welling in her eyes. She hurried away before they saw her tremble. As the noon hour approached, the cafe grew quieter. Many of the supporters had returned to their work, leaving behind a sense of solidarity. Marisol cleared the last tray of empty dishes from a table and took a moment to rest against the counter. She closed her eyes and let out a breath she had been holding all morning. The hurt from yesterday lingered, but it felt lighter now, surrounded by so much goodness. Just then, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. It was a message from her cousin Tanya, back home. "Saw the news," it read. "So proud of you. You're amazing." Marisol's lips curved into a smile. She typed back quickly, "I couldn't have done it without everyone here." She tucked the phone away, her heart full. The afternoon brought a surprise. A local food blogger, known for highlighting small businesses, arrived with a camera. She asked Mr. Donovan if she could interview Marisol about the cafe's new policy and what had happened. Marisol felt her stomach tighten, but nodded. Stood before the camera, her palms damp, and took a deep breath. "Yesterday was hard," she began, her voice steady. "But I believe that everyone deserves respect. When I heard hate at our table, I had to do something. I'm so thankful to work at a place that cares about kindness as much as I do." She spoke about the cafe's Respect at Our Table campaign, how they would train staff to handle difficult situations, how they wanted every customer to feel safe and valued. She talked about how small actions can inspire big changes. As she spoke, more customers entered, drawn by a news alert on their phones. Some paused to listen, nodding in agreement. When the interview ended, the blogger thanked her and promised to share the story widely. By late afternoon, the cafe began to slow. The sun dipped low outside, casting warm light through the windows. Marisol wiped down the counter, thinking, back to the day's events? She recalled the gentle smiles of supporters, the nods of encouragement, and the strength she found in standing up for what was right. She felt a deep sense of purpose as she placed a fresh batch of cinnamon rolls. In the display case, Mr. Donovan joined her. "You've changed things here," he said softly. That smile on your face, people come for that. They come for you. Marisol shook her head, blinking back tears. It was a team effort, she insisted. We all showed up for each other. He smiled, then patted the counter. Just know that you're the heart of this place. When closing time arrived, Marisol began her indulged day routine. Swept floors, wiped tables, and restocked supplies. The cafe was quiet now, its bright lights reflecting off the polished wood. She paused at the door, turning to take in the empty space. It felt peaceful, but it also held the echoes of voices, laughter, conversation, and the applause from yesterday. She stepped outside and locked the door, her hand lingering on the cool handle. The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled. Marisol took a moment to look up at the sky, where pink and gold had given way to deep blue. She felt the weight of the day lift, replaced by hope and determination. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she also knew she would never be alone on her walk home. She passed the community center where a poster announced a meeting tonight, standing against Hedda Community Forum. She paused, smiling. She planned to attend, to share her experience and to learn from others. She wanted to help build a community where respect was not just a policy, but a way of life. That night, after a simple dinner and a quick video call, with Tanya, Marisol lay in bed thinking of her grandmother's words, "Stand tall, child, and let your heart guide you." She closed her eyes, feeling the strength of yesterday's courage and today's support carry her into sleep. And as she drifted off, she realized that her story was not just about refusing to serve the 2 men, it was about a community standing together against hate, about every person in that cafe choosing kindness, and about a young woman who found her voice and inspired others to use theirs. The world could be a difficult place, but she had learned that morning that laughter, love, and respect could shine through even the darkest moments. Marisol dreamed of the next day at Sunnyside Cafe, of familiar faces, of new customers, of the gentle clink of cups, and the swirl of steam. She felt ready for whatever came, her heart full of hope. And somewhere in her dreams she heard the soft echo of applause, reminding her that she belonged to something bigger than herself, and that was a comforting thought as she drifted deeper into rest, prepared to greet the sunrise once more with a brave and open heart. Marisol woke early again, before the first light of dawn. She slipped on her uniform and tied her apron with care. Her mind buzzed with memories of the past 2 days. She felt both nervous and excited. Today was special. The community forum on respect and kindness was set to begin at Sunnyside Cafe after closing. Marisol hoped many people would come to share ideas and support one another. When she arrived, the cafe was empty and quiet. She paused in the front doorway and breathed. In the smooth scent of coffee, she could almost hear the stories and laughter that the room would hold later. She placed her tote bag on a chair and walked behind the counter. James leaned over and handed her a mug of hot tea. "You ready for tonight?" he asked softly. Marisol sipped the tea and nodded. "I think so," she said, though her voice trembled just a bit. As the morning rush began, Marisol found comfort in the familiar routine. She greeted Mr. Patel, who ordered his usual spinach omelet. She filled water glasses for the new family of 4 who had heard about yesterday's news. She poured coffee for the couple who worked at the law office down the street. Each order felt like a small gift. Each smile felt like a reminder that kindness mattered. By mid-morning, Marisol noticed people quietly talking about the forum. Some older regulars promised to stay after hours. A few newcomers asked questions about the time and place. The cafe's bulletin board was decorated with colorful flyers announcing, "Standing Against Hate Community Forum tonight at 7 p.m. Underneath a simple slogan read, "Respect at our table." Marisol's heart warmed each time she saw the sign. Just before noon, her phone buzzed with a text from the local newspaper. "Can we interview you later today about the forum?" read Marisol, considered politely refusing. But then she thought of her grandmother's words, "Use your voice, child, to lift others up." She typed back, "Yes, I'll join you at 3. The reply came fast. "Thank you. See you then." The rest of the lunch service passed in a happy blur. Marisol carried plates of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. She refilled iced tea pitchers and cleared crumbs from tables. When the clock struck 2, she took a moment to breathe. She stood behind the counter and looked around. The cafe felt full of hope. Customers chatted softly about their plans to stay for the evening meeting. A young woman in glasses told her, "I think we need more spaces like this in our town." Marisol smiled and thanked her. At 3, the newspaper reporter arrived with a small camera and a recorder. She introduced herself as Rosa and asked Marisol to sit at a table by the window. Marisol arranged 2 cups of coffee in front of them. The sun shone through the glass, casting a warm glow on her face. Rosa asked questions about what had happened with the 2 men and why the forum was important. Marisol spoke with honesty and calm. She talked about dignity, respect, and the power of community. She shared how each person who stood with her gave her strength. Rosa listened and nodded. She asked about the cafe's new training for staff. Marisol described how managers and waitstaff practiced calm, clear ways to address hate speech. She explained that everyone deserved safety and respect, no matter where they came from or what they looked like. When the interview ended, Rosa thanked her and said the story would be in tomorrow's paper. Marisol felt proud but also a little shy. She did not seek attention for herself, but she hoped the message would reach more hearts. As afternoon turned to evening, the cafe grew quiet. Most customers had left, but a few stayed late to finish homework or visit with friends. Marisol and James cleaned tables and stacked chairs. Mr. Donovan dimmed the lights and moved chairs into a circle in the center of the room, placed a small table with water pitchers and cups inside the circle. The "Respect at our table" sign hung behind them. Marisol arranged extra chairs at the back for those who preferred to stand. By 6:50, people began to arrive. First came the pastor, his kind eyes warm behind his glasses. Then the school teacher, carrying a stack of note cards, a group of ... Neighbors followed, brothers and sisters from the block who looked proud to be there. Even a few local business owners showed up, dressed in neat shirts and dresses. They greeted Marisol with smiles and thanks. She handed out name tags and small packets of paper and pens. At 7 sharp, Mr. Donovan stood in the center and welcomed everyone. He spoke about how the cafe had always been a place of welcome, and now they wanted to expand that spirit beyond their walls. Then he invited Marisol to share her story. She stepped forward, her heart pounding, but she held her head high. She told the room about the 2 men's hateful words and how she had refused to serve them. She spoke of the support she received, of the applause that filled the cafe when they left. Tears gathered in some eyes as she spoke, and a hush fell over the crowd. She said that she did not want to be a hero. She simply wanted to work in a place where everyone felt safe. She described the cafe's promise that no one would face hate at their table. The room was silent for a moment, heavy with feeling. Then, one by one, people began to share. The pastor spoke first. He talked about compassion and how small acts of courage could move hearts. He offered a prayer for kindness. The teacher spoke. Next, she described how she would bring the message to her students to help them learn respect from an early age. A young man stood and said he would share his own story of facing bias, so others knew they were not alone. Others added ideas, a group meeting for teens, neighborhood watch groups that stood up to hate, art projects celebrating diversity. Marisol listened, her eyes bright. The circle buzzed with energy and hope. People scribbled notes and nodded in agreement. Some shared ideas for future events, a potluck dinner, a youth forum, a poster contest for local schools. A woman suggested they partner with the library for reading programs highlighting stories of kindness. Another man said he would speak with the city council about more inclusive public spaces. The forum lasted more than an hour. Voices rose and fell in gentle passion. When the last idea was shared, Mr. Donovan closed the meeting with thanks. He invited everyone to enjoy coffee and pastries on the house. Marisol and James brought out trays of sugar cookies and brownies. People mingled, laughing and talking. Late into the night, cafe felt alive with warmth and purpose. At last, the crowd thinned. Chairs were folded and stowed, and the floor was swept. Marisol looked around the now empty room, its walls still echoing conversation. She felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had never imagined that her morning at work would lead to this community united in kindness. James turned off the last light, and they locked the door together. On the walk home, Marisol thought about all the faces she had seen. Worried, the hopeful, the determined. She felt proud of each of them. She knew that change began with small steps, with simple choices to stand up for what was right. She whispered into the cool night, "Thank you." That night, as she lay in bed, Marisol replayed moments from the day. She felt a calm joy, a certainty that she was not alone. She thought of her grandmother's wisdom, of the lessons learned at Sunnyside Cafe, and of the many people who chose respect over hate. She drifted to sleep with a smile, dreaming of the days ahead of more forums, more conversations, and a community that stood together, quietly powerful in its unity. And in her dreams, she saw those two men standing outside the cafe window. But instead of sneers, they looked thoughtful, even a little bit ashamed. She imagined them reading the headlines, hearing the news of the forum, and perhaps learning that respect wins in the end. She woke with the sun on her face, ready to greet another day. Another chance to welcome everyone at her table with an open heart. Marisol arrived early again, slipping into the cafe before the sun had fully risen. The room was quiet, empty, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of her shoes on the tile floor. She breathed in deep, letting the familiar smells of coffee beans and fresh pastries settle her nerves. Today felt different. There was an electric buzz of anticipation in the air. She remembered how the two men had stormed out days before, furious, red-faced, demanding respect they had long forgotten to give others. She moved behind the counter and began her morning routine, loading mugs into the dishwasher and wiping down the milk frother. James arrived with a tray of warm scones, and they exchanged a quick smile. He handed her a scone wrapped in wax paper. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded and took a bite, feeling the sweetness calm her. "I'm ready," she said. The doors opened just as the clock chimed 7. Regulars filed in, greeting Marisol by name and praising the Respect at Our Table campaign on the bulletin board. They lingered over their coffee, sharing news of the men's situation. Paused mid-step, curiosity pulling at her heart. She heard Mr. Donovan explaining to an early customer that the men had not only been banned from the cafe, but had also caused trouble at their workplace. Because video footage of their racist remarks had spread online, the men's company had launched its own investigation. Marisol felt a twinge of something unsettled. She did not delight in others' misfortune. Yet she recognized the importance of accountability. These men had walked into a friendly cafe and spat hatred at a woman simply doing her job. Their actions would ripple beyond Sunnyside. She imagined them at their office, hurried phone calls, tense meetings, anxious apologies. She wondered if they now understood what it felt like to find one's own words caught on camera, watched by strangers worldwide. As the morning wore on, the cafe filled with customers chatting about the news. A trio of teenagers lingered at a corner table, scrolling on their phones. One looked up and waved. "Marisol," she called, "the video just reached 10,000 views." The other two cheered. Marisol offered them fresh glasses of lemonade. They grinned at her. "You're famous," one said. She blushed, her cheeks warm. "I'd rather be known for kindness," she replied. They nodded solemnly, as though they understood a lesson in manners. Midday brought a surprise guest. The local TV news crew. Marisol wiped her hands on her apron as the reporter approached. He introduced himself and asked if he could ask a few questions about the men's fallout. She agreed, stepping back so he could record her against the cafe's Respect at Our Table sign. He asked how she felt about the men's company launching an inquiry. She paused, considering her words. She spoke plainly that she believed all people should show respect, and when hate goes unchecked, it harms everyone. She added that she hoped the men would learn from their mistake and treat others with dignity in the future. The camera clicked off, and the crew left with a promise to air her words that evening. The rest of the afternoon moved in a gentle rhythm. Marisol cleared a table for an older couple who came in just to thank her again. They sat near the front window, holding hands over their coffee and smiling at her fiercely determined face. She poured more coffee and listened as they talked about standing up to injustice all their lives. Their stories gave her strength. She realized that her single act of refusal had connected her to a web of people who valued fairness and respect as much as she did. After closing time, Marisol and James began the nightly chores. They stacked chairs and wiped down counters. Mr. Donovan joined them, his face serious but kind. He handed Marisol a tablet showing a message from the company that employed the two men. The message said that the men had been placed on unpaid leave while the investigation continued. It noted that hateful language violated the company's code of conduct. Marisol felt a mixture of relief and sadness, relief that justice was moving forward, sadness that people could still hold such hateful views. "Do you ever think about forgiving them?" James asked quietly as he swept the floor. Marisol paused, dustpan in hand. She thought of the angry faces, the ugly words, the way the men had tried to erase her dignity. But she also recalled the kindness pouring in from her community, the way people had rallied to support her. She sighed softly. "I hope they learn to respect everyone," she said. "I hope they can find a way to change." James nodded. That would be something. They finished cleaning and locked the doors. Marisol stepped outside into the warm evening air. The street was calm, the bustle of the day behind her. She glanced at the cafe's windows, now dark, and felt a deep sense of belonging. This place had become more than a job, it had become a beacon of hope. On her walk home, her phone buzzed. A text from Rosa, the newspaper reporter. "Front page story tomorrow morning? You're the face of our town's kindness." Al smiled. Then a second message from the TV crew. "You'll be on the 6 o'clock news tonight." Her heart fluttered. The screen might show her face, her voice speaking words she had prayed would help others see the power of respect. Later that evening, she sat on her couch, warming her hands with a mug of tea. She watched the news segment. The anchor spoke of the cafe stand against hate, of the two men's suspension, of the community forum that had brought neighbors together. They showed clips of Marisol speaking, her calm voice echoing around the room. As she watched herself, she felt a lump in her throat. She whispered to the empty room, "I did not expect this." But she also felt gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to stand against hatred and gratitude for a community that refused to remain silent. The segment ended. The screen went dark. Marisol set her mug on the coffee table and leaned back. She thought of her grandmother's words. "Do right, even if your voice shakes." Her voice had quivered at times, but she had spoken anyway. And now something was changing. People were talking, communities were gathering, and perhaps hearts were opening. She closed her eyes and let the day's events wash over her. She imagined the two men reading the news, seeing themselves captured on film. She hoped their companies' inquiry would lead to real understanding. She hoped they would learn to treat every person they met with dignity, just as she had, even when they least expected it. As she drifted toward sleep, Marisol felt a calm resolve settle in her chest. This was only the beginning. It would always be people who hated, who judged, who refused to see others as equals. But there would also always be those who stood up, who spoke out, who reached across divisions. She would continue to do her part, one cup of coffee at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of respect at a time. And when the morning came, she would return to Sunnyside Caf, apron tied, ready to greet everyone, old friends and new, faces alike, with the same warm smile and open heart. Because in every person she served, she saw a story waiting to be told, a lesson in kindness waiting to be learned, and a chance to make the world just a little bit better. Marisol woke, with sunlight drifting through her curtains. She stretched and thought of Sunnyside Caf, where so much had changed. The morning air felt fresh as she walked to work. She felt calm, but also excited. Today the cafe would host its first kindness breakfast, inviting anyone in town to share stories of respect and hope. When she arrived, she saw colorful paper hearts taped to the windows. Each heart had a message written by a customer. "Thank you for standing up. Kindness wins. Proud of you, Marisol." She paused, reading each one, and felt tears of joy prick her eyes. She smoothed her apron and entered. Greeting James and Mr. Donovan, They stood by the counter with trays of muffins and fresh fruit. The aroma of cinnamon rolls and brewed coffee filled the room. "Ready?" James asked, handing her a tray of orange juice. She nodded, feeling the warmth of their support. "Let's make today special," she said softly. They arranged chairs and tables in small clusters, leaving space for people to talk and listen. On each table, they placed a vase of daisies and a stack of blank cards, inviting guests to write messages of hope. By 8 o'clock, families, neighbors, and friends began to arrive. Some carried photo frames, others held notebooks, and a few brought homemade pastries to share. Marisol recognized many faces from the community forum: the pastor, the school teacher, the local librarian, and even the teenagers who had cheered when the video hit 10,000 views. Each person greeted her with a smile or a hug. The room buzzed with quiet excitement. Marisol moved through the crowd, serving coffee and orange juice. She listened as people chatted about what had happened with the two men. Some said they had learned a lesson. Others hoped the men would find a path to kindness. But mostly, people spoke of how the cafe had become a beacon of respect. Told her that their children now understood the power of standing up. Neighbors talked about starting a monthly community kindness walk to encourage friendly conversation on every block. As the tables filled, Mr. Donovan tapped his glass gently to get everyone's attention. The crowd fell into a respectful hush. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice warm. Sunnyside Cafe opened its doors to welcome everyone. "Today we open our hearts. We want to hear your stories, moments when kindness changed your life, or when you found the courage to speak up." He smiled at Marisol. "And now, I'd like to invite our brave waitress Marisol to share her thoughts." Marisol felt her pulse quicken. She stepped forward, holding a blank card that read, "Stand up with kindness." She looked at the crowd and found strength in their kind eyes. She spoke in a clear, gentle voice. "A few days ago, I did something simple. I refused to serve hate. I stood by what I believe: respect for everyone. Since then I have heard stories of courage from each of you. You have shown me that kindness is not just a word, but a choice. Each time we speak up, we make the world a bit brighter." She set the card on a small stand on the table beside her. "Today, I invite you to share your own cards. Write a word, a sentence, or a memory of kindness. Let's fill this cafe with hope." She stepped back as a line formed. One by one, people came forward. A young mother wrote, "My daughter said, share your smile." An elderly man wrote, "I held the door for a stranger." A teenager scribbled, "I praised a friend for being brave." The stack of cards grew tall, each one a shining promise of goodwill. Meanwhile, James and other staff refilled trays with fruit tarts, blueberry muffins, and cups of steaming coffee. The atmosphere felt like a warm hug, gentle, inclusive, and mysterious. Full of life. Marisol moved behind the counter, offering refills and listening to small stories. She learned that the school teacher had used the cafe's story in her lesson plan. The pastor said his sermon that Sunday would focus on respect and love. A local chef announced she would host a cooking class for teens, teaching them teamwork and caring for others through food. By midday, the cafe was buzzing with laughter and conversation. A little girl named Sarah tugged on Marisol's apron. "Can I have an extra cookie, please?" she asked, her eyes wide. Marisol knelt and handed her a heart-shaped sugar cookie. "Of course," she said. Sarah took a big bite and shook her head. "It's so good," she said with a grin. Marisol laughed. "Everything tastes better with kindness," she replied. After the last guest wrote a card, Mr. Donovan collected them all and placed them in a clear jar on the counter. "We will keep these cards on display," he said. "Whenever someone needs hope, they can read them and remember that kindness is everywhere." The crowd applauded softly. As the event wound down, Marisol sat at a table with James. They shared a simple lunch of soup and bread. She felt content, her heart full. "Look at that jar," she said, pointing to the stack of cards. "Each one reminds me why we do this.